Well, good morning. I hope everybody's having a great morning. Um, I've always had lots of information I wanted to share with everybody, and sometimes I feel like I should be talking much faster. So, Phil Franco and Ben Shapiro, we talk really quick, and then you have to record our videos so that you can actually understand what we're saying. I would like to slow down a little bit. Sorry about that, little feedback again from my channel, just making sure I was actually online. So in doing that, again, I'd like to thank everybody who checks into my show each day and views the video online on YouTube. And of course, I'd love to see you subscribe and like the video and share these videos. The information that continues to come out, I'm hoping that people are finding very troubling, and we're going to talk a little bit about that this morning, and we're going to watch a few videos. Because for me, if nothing else, this is a video log, dated video log, that, will have some predictions. And when I started the daily show and I started the videos about COVID-19, I had a big concern about what was going to happen with the interaction of people. I mean, when it comes right down to it, everything that occurs for us each day when we wake up, when we go out, we interact with people. I mean, people control how we own our homes. People control how we own our cars. People control how much interest we get on our money. People control the way we should think. People control the laws that impact how we can live our lives. And it comes right down to what type of interaction we want to have. And again, I've made it very clear that my concern is that this is a dry run to socialism. And in the last 2 days, I have continued to see what I feared weeks ago would start to happen. So we're going to watch something from Philip DeFranco again this morning. That's just mind-boggling, troubling, and everybody should be in a place where they're afraid of what's coming. Hang on, I'm trying to... I don't know why this is happening, but we'll see if I can get it back here.
Get your business insured in 10 minutes or less with Next Insurance. It's super easy. Tell us what you do. Select your coverage. Pay online.
You can request that the person come out, they'll deliver you a ballot, they'll check your ID. You are incredibly safe to go out.
How are you going to be dressed head to toe in PPE, looking like a more paranoid version of Dexter in his kill room and be like, yeah, no, it's okay, everyone's safe? For those unaware, the man in that very pixelated video is Republican Wisconsin Assembly Speaker Robin Vos. If you missed yesterday's show, he and Wisconsin Republicans opposed all efforts to stop in-person voting in Wisconsin, despite there being a stay-at-home order in Wisconsin. A situation that was so concerning, nerve-wracking, confusing, we saw poll workers quitting en masse. So, despite that, Vos thought it
Made no sense to cancel the election and just push it off to a future date.
And really, if there was a photo that expressed how I feel about the situation, it's this one. This is ridiculous. And reportedly, the woman in that photo is Milwaukee resident Jennifer Taft. We see her in line to vote. I don't know if you've seen a number of the videos where just the lines stretch so far. She told the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, "I'm disgusted. I requested an absentee ballot almost 3 weeks ago and never got it. I have a father dying from lung disease and I have to risk my life and his just to exercise my right to vote." But anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. I have a whole show for you. Welcome back to the Philip DeFranco Show. Buckle up. Hit that.
Okay, so it's convenient that people who follow more liberal thinking now all of a sudden think we should have other ways to vote. An example of that would be is there has been conversation about setting up electronic voting and voting from the computer for years, and especially more so in the last few years because of the height of technology. So because we have securities that we do in place now, because we have technology available through our governments, there shouldn't be a problem with going online like you do on My Vote in Wisconsin and register to vote. It's really simple. And you get yourself registered. So there's the rub. The problem that occurs with anything like doing something different is that it would keep people from voting who aren't supposed to be voting, or keep people who are registering from registering to vote, meaning illegal citizens, illegal aliens, people who are undocumented, people who are not citizens of this country are going to find it very hard to get past these things that we have in place to vote. And that's a big issue. So, but now, because everybody's running this idea that you can't even leave your home, they're going to say, oh, we could do something different, or we can delay votes. And all of this leads to voter fraud. There's a reason we have a system. My voting polling area here in this area understood my issues. I'm a type 2 diabetic. I never left my car. They were willing to bring ballots out to you in the car. I got my absentee ballot. I don't know what she's talking about. I got my absentee ballot in a day. So if there's a problem, then, I would like to see that she actually did. We have to be careful with the information that comes out. If you don't do your fact checking to make sure that she actually did request it, and talk to the person she says she requested it from. All of the polling places have people who are in charge, who are available by phone or available by email, because the person that runs our polling place is available by phone or email. So with me being at high risk, I'm able to handle what I need to do, and people are very helpful, and they help me keep from having to get out in front of people and be at home where I'm more safe, if you want. But, ultimately, voters had a choice for months. They could have requested, in the first part of March, they could have requested an absentee ballot and gotten their ballot and not had to go to the polling places. Every single person in the country can do that every time a vote comes up. We have the same thing with our absentee vote for the coming primary, for the regular election. I already have the ballots for that. And so we already received our absentee ballots. So what I'm saying is that there isn't really any excuse. If you didn't want to go out and if you didn't want to risk it, there was something there to help you do it. And I think that it's important to do our fact checking, and that's going to lead into a lot of the things I'm going to be showing today. So let's keep going here.
Like button, and let's just jump into it. And the first thing I want to talk about today is, over the past few weeks, I've gotten very angry about and have mocked and shamed a number of people who have been ridiculously dismissive of stay-at-home orders, social distancing recommendations, their possible role in being super spreaders of a disease that could affect people that are far more vulnerable than them. But there is a right way and a wrong way to do that. And today I have the unfortunate job of showing you the man who decided to do it the bad way. John Raidmaker. He is reportedly a physician, and he noticed a group of teenage girls who were outside an amphitheater in Louisville, Kentucky. And he was upset that these girls were not following social distancing guidelines, and so he and another woman approached them. And then we see this happen.
Right. Okay. Yeah, we're leaving. Please, let's not cuss at each other.
What you want?
No, I'm not calling you anything, sir. Just don't talk to us with
This asshole right here.
Hey, don't touch, hey, do not touch, hey, God. As much as you call them, you do not touch. Do not fucking touch me. You get me my hey, get away from her.
Right, so that clip ends where it appears that he is choking one of the girls. Now, reports say that after this, he and the woman left the scene. The video then gets uploaded to the internet. It gets a lot of attention over the past couple of days. Right, there is a lot of outrage about his actions in general. He got physical with several of them, and also because the most extreme violence was directed towards the only black person in the group. Right, but this isn't a story just about outrage. The big update to this is that Raidmaker has now been arrested and charged with strangulation, with a local CBS station also reporting that he's been placed on leave from his job. With this situation, Louisville police put out a statement statement saying, obviously, we do not advise individuals concerned about social distancing to take matters into their own hands and confront people about it, especially in any physical way. And adding, we ask people who are concerned about large gatherings to call 311 or 911 to report their concern. And a big thing to note here is that Rainmaker isn't the only person that's gotten physical over the social distancing frustration. We've seen incidents all over the country with violence coming from both ends. For example, on Monday, the Miami Herald reported that a man and his daughter called out a group of college kids for partying in the Keys. There appeared to be about 20 people drinking. The two confronted them about social distancing, asking them to keep the noise down, and then reportedly those two got beat with baseball bats. In New York, we saw a report of a 32-year-old pushing an 86-year-old woman by the name of Jane Marshall to the ground because she was standing too close to her. And reportedly, she hit her head on the floor, lost consciousness, and then died a few hours later. There have also been reports of when the police get involved, sometimes they overstep. In Colorado, police issued an apology after handcuffing a father in front of his 6-year-old for playing in the park. Where the sign at that park said that it was closed, but in finer print said that groups of 4 could, go walking, hiking, biking, other activities. The man arrested, Matt Mooney, said that he was just with his wife and daughter, but police said that there were 12 to 15 other people there, so it was unclear if this was like a misunderstanding or if they were a part of other smaller groups there. That eventually led to Mooney refusing to provide ID, maintaining that he didn't do anything unlawful. But he gets handcuffed, he's back in the patrol car for 10 minutes, they release him, and after this, you had Mooney saying that if anyone was violating social distancing, it was the officer, saying during the contact, none of the officers had masks on, none of them had gloves on, and they're in my face handcuffing me, they're touching me. Right, this isn't kind of a he said, she said. The police department has apologized, even in a statement saying it is evident there was an overreach by our police officers. But the final thing I want to touch on with this story, on the note of shaming, specifically quarantine shaming, the examples we just talked about are on the more extreme end of that, obviously. Right, I'm going to be a hero for a second, say the hard thing that just other people are scared to say. Don't hit people with baseball bats or just choke strangers unless it's their thing and they ask you nicely. But in general, non-violent kinds of shaming can be effective. This is something that BBC News actually kind of explored right in. Social psychologists say that shaming plays a significant role in enforcing social norms, especially at a time when norms are rapidly changing as a result of coronavirus. Right, so I guess the main point of this story is don't hit them, but hit them with the don't be stupid. Stupid? But from that, I want to share some stuff I love today in Awesome, brought to you by NordVPN.com/Phil. And for those who don't know, a VPN basically creates a secure tunnel for whatever device you're using and the internet, keeping your digital privacy intact. And really, these days, no matter what you're doing on your device, if you're doing it without the protection of a proper VPN,
So I feel like I should just jump up and walk back and forth and throw up my hands and get crazy and say, he is trying to be funny there, but he's not the first person on the news to talk about shaming. And I can't believe that anyone is advocating that we now should make people, I guess if they're saying shaming, feel bad, interfere with their rights, turn them in, turn their friends in. There was an article on the news, there's a talk show talking with someone about next steps in order to get things going. And unbelievably, he's now advocating that should you get COVID-19, you would need to then tell everyone you were with, tell or report everyone you've come in contact with, so that they in turn could be quarantined to be sure that the virus doesn't spread anymore. Are you kidding me? So we've gotten to a point already where someone has a video, because we don't know how many times this has taken place in other places that there wasn't any video, or they didn't do anything about it, or these interactions are occurring because people are getting pent up and they're tired of what's going on, and they may or may not agree with what the governors are doing. Ultimately, you've got to deal with the fact that you have one individual in each state putting people in their homes, and we're not even close to the predictions that they had. I mean, come on, you gotta take in some reality here. So we were supposed to be having the worst week of our lives this week. Well, we are, because we're all tired of being pent up in our homes. But they were making it like this doomsday. It's Thursday. The week's almost over. And things are slowing down or they're leveling off. I don't see that as being the worst week of our lives. I actually see that as a very big positive. In addition, we're not getting anywhere close to the predictions and the models. And to speak of the models, basically everybody's saying the models keep changing. So we go from 250,000 deaths to 100,000 deaths to 94,000 deaths to the last report I saw somebody bring up is 64,000 deaths. And as I talked about in my previous show, that model is going to continue to change to be more in line with reality, and probably will be less than the flu. We do not need to be turning people in. We do not need to be attacking people. We need to deal with the fact that if you are at risk, like myself, you need to take extra steps like everybody's done with the flu and make yourself unavailable during a time that you could possibly get it. Now, what's important about that? Well, one thing that they talked about when this person was saying we should turn people in, because that's what he said, we're going to have to turn them in, and we're going to have to say we touched them, and then they're going to be quarantined for 2 weeks. So ask yourself this question. Number one, how much PTO, vacation, or sick time do you get from your employer? And if you have to take 2 weeks immediately without notice, what do you think your employer is going to say? So the bulk of the people in the country that are working and don't necessarily have a real challenge with this are going to be impacted the greatest by any ridiculous idea that you've got to now turn in everybody that you have had contact with, and then they're going to have to self-quarantine immediately, and they're going to basically call in and say, I'm going to be out for 2 weeks. I don't know about you, but every employer I've worked for over the years needs at least 3 to 4 weeks notice that you're going to be gone for 2 weeks so that they can accommodate that time off and get things ready so other people can handle what you're working on. What's going to end up happening is those people are just going to get fired. And no matter how much you want to believe the different, it doesn't matter what laws we have in place. We are a work at will country. There is no law protecting anybody from getting fired for any reason. Employers make up reasons all the time. People fight it in unemployment all the time. Countless ridiculous ideas just so that the employer can keep from paying unemployment. And they will put in their manuals that you have to give so much notice or you could be terminated. And don't believe for a second that they won't do it. And don't believe that some ridiculous law saying you can't is going to stop that from happening. This idea is asinine. Absolutely asinine. And goes further and further towards a socialist state where it's all about the government. The people all have to work with the government. You have to watch what you say. You have to watch what you say to. But if somebody's not working within the confines of whatever current rule one person has dictated to us, then you need to do things like what this person did. You need to take matters into your own hands. You need to turn them into the government. You need to turn them into the police. I mean, on and on and on. It will get to the point where you can't even leave your home and feel confident that people will just leave you alone. That's what we want to have for our life, is when we go out, we're going to have people watching us. Every move we make, someone might be watching, and someone's going to turn us in. And we need to learn that that's how we need to live. And we need to live in the confines of, hey, you know, this one person said we need to live this way. You're not getting the point. I don't give a shit what ever says. I'm working around the fact that I'm at high risk, and I'm trying to make sure that I'm not exposed to the virus because I know I'm at higher risk. Younger people who are not at high risk are very healthy, don't have anything to worry about unless they have some underlying condition they don't know about. And there is a drug out there that people are responding to. And we have a flu vaccine that needs to be modified. Nobody's talking about the flu I said flu vaccine, I apologize, flu shot. The flu shot is what we're going to have to go to. The flu shot is going to have to expose us to the virus so that we can fend it off. Just like the other viruses that are in the flu shot. That's what's in the flu shot. There's no magic answer. You don't get to go take the flu shot once and then never have to take it again. That's not a vaccine. That doesn't stop you like it does from getting the measles or getting the mumps or getting chicken pox. You know, you get chicken pox and you never get it again. You know, so we have vaccines that keep us from getting diseases that we're able to isolate in that way. You're not going to isolate COVID. COVID mutates all the time. You're going to have to continue to take on a strain in a shot to keep yourself healthy. And older people, and we're going to have to modify the shot so that older people can take it and build up an immunity to it to help them keep from getting it. Because people who are older, even though they get the flu shot, still get sick. The virus continues to make itself stronger until it makes you sick. It will do that the entire season until it starts to fall off. And part of the reason it falls off is that its very genome tells it can only last so long, then it needs to back off so there are more people for the next, or there are more individuals or more beings for the next time. That's a known fact. So that's why you have these cycles. It gets strong and then it gets weak. It's the natural process of the world. Why are we having high density areas get so much of this? Because the world in itself does not like density. Density breeds sickness. Every animal, every being always has things that come into play when our densities get too high. So of course a virus like that would run rampant in New York. 11 million people living on a little tiny island. Absolutely. Japan would have the same problem if they weren't doing what they do. And if that's the way they want to live and they're happy living that way, that's what they should do. But that's not what we have in this country. And these things that are being shown and this information that we're seeing, you should be afraid.
You're seriously tempting fate, and not only does NordVPN make it incredibly easy and affordable to protect your connected devices by anonymizing your internet activity and protecting you from malicious internet attackers, but also they can help you on the entertainment front, letting you access content that's normally blocked in your country. And many times the movies and latest episodes of your favorite shows are unavailable where you live. You know, with the NordVPN, I can just flip my settings to the UK, for instance, and get access to the season 5 episodes of Better Call Saul on Netflix. And that's just one example. There's a lot out there. And so if you want to start protecting your devices, you want to stream from anywhere today, go to nordvpn.com/Phil and use code Phil to get 70% off a 3-year plan and an extra month for free. The first bit of awesome is if after today's show you want some more of my dumb face and also maybe some others, got 2 ACW videos and clips with Jack's films going out today. Link to those down below. We got the Schitt's Creek cast playing How Well Do You Star, King Princess at a Tiny Desk Home concert, and a couple make a tiny art gallery for their gerbils. Got a clip of Aubrey Plaza on Crank Yankers. Bon Appetit gave us pro chefs taking you on a tour of their kitchens. So if you want to see the full versions of everything I just shared, the secret link of the day, really anything at all, links as always are in the description down below. And then for a story, I wanted to highlight people that are doing good right now. And among those, you have people like YouTuber Jacksepticeye. Yesterday, he launched a coronavirus charity live stream, initially setting a goal of $300,000, donating $100,000 himself. And as I'm recording this video, just from his live stream, he has raised over $660,000. In fact, the donation page is still up, so if you'd like to participate as well, I'll link to it down below. Then, on just a completely different level, different planet, we saw Jack Dorsey, who's the CEO of Twitter and Square, saying that he will be donating $1 billion. This to the Smart Small LLC to fund global COVID-19 relief, adding that after we disarm this pandemic, this focus will shift to girls' health and education and UBI. Also noting it will operate transparently, it will be publicly tracked, and adding, I hope this inspires others to do something similar. Life is too short, so let's do everything we can today to help people now. The final person I'll mention here is Harry Styles, though I will know there was a little bit of a controversy here. So Harry Styles today announced that he was selling t-shirts to raise funds for those fighting the coronavirus. And so for $26, fans would get a white tee with a black slogan printed on the front and back. The front reading, stay home, stay safe, protect each other. Back reading, this t-shirt fights COVID-19, treat people with kindness. According to the official website where you can pre-order the item, 100% of profits will be donated to the COVID-19 Solidarity Response Fund for the World Health Organization, powered by the UN Foundation. While many were excited about the news and rushing to order their shirts, others raised several concerns. Some argue that encouraging people to donate directly or doing so himself would be a better move, rather than possibly losing some of that money to cover production expenses. Many were also concerned about those who would now have to make and deliver the shirts, some noting those people, they're clearly not staying home and staying safe. Don't people have to go out to work to manufacture these shirts? Isn't that really contradictory? But on the other side of this, you had people supporting and defending Harry, noting that the shirts aren't expected to ship until 4 to 6 weeks after receiving a purchase confirmation, which might signal the manufacturers are holding off on production or slowing it down to ensure safety. However, I will say no information about those details has actually been confirmed or explained. Others also arguing that some people who might have not just donated directly might now do it because they have something they can get. Also, I will say this kind of backlash was not completely unexpected. You know, for example, we saw Rita Ora facing similar criticism last month after releasing her own merchandise to raise funds for that same organization. But also, regarding Styles, this was not a surprising move. Earlier this year, he launched a a Treat People with Kindness movement and created a range of merchandise with profits distributed to local charities around the world. But ultimately, what I'll say regarding my reaction to this based off of what we have right now, I can't really fault Harry Styles for this. I mean, right on the page where people can buy this shirt, where 100% of the profits will go to a charitable organization, there is also a link to that charitable organization that goes straight to a page where you can donate directly. And so, I think this raises awareness.
So let's take a quick second and see what's going on with Ben.
Getting stuck sucks. At HostGator,
as good news starts to come in, Americans ask what it will take to start to reopen. President Trump targets the WHO, and the staffing chaos in the administration continues. I'm Ben Shapiro. This is The Ben Shapiro Show. The Ben Shapiro Show is sponsored by ExpressVPN. Your online activity should not be public. Protect yourself right now at expressvpn.com/Ben. Before we get to anything else, you may have noticed the market a little bit volatile over the past few weeks. You noticed that a little bit? Well, maybe it would have been a good idea like a few weeks ago to have diversified into precious metals at least a little bit. Well, the same thing remains true today. In a world of volatility where you can't know what's happening next, it's not a bad idea to be diversified into at least something that has a solid value to it. Right now, you shouldn't be relying just on the market. Call Birch Gold and convert your traditional IRA or 401k into a precious metals IRA if that is something you are interested in doing. If you've not yet taken the first step of requesting a free information kit on gold, you should know this is not a particularly complicated process. Birch Gold will go to work, make things simple for you. They will answer all of your questions. They will have a conversation with you, and you can determine if precious metals make sense for you. There is no obligation, so you have nothing to lose to take that first step. Birch Gold Group has thousands of satisfied customers, countless 5-star reviews, and A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. Again, if you had some precious metals in your portfolio over the last few weeks, you would be a lot better off. It's one of the reasons why I suggest that everybody diversify at least a little bit into precious metals. Don't wait until the market drops again to protect your hard-earned savings. Text Ben to 474747. See how simple and straightforward the move will be for you. Again, that's Ben, my name, to 474747, and go check out my friends over at Birch Gold. Alrighty, so we have some actual good news this morning. We have some bad news in the sense that there is always a trailing indicator of where we are on this virus, and that is the death count. The death count in New York was very high last night. The death count overall in the United States was very high yesterday, but that is because we're moving quickly toward the peak. So the death count tends to lag the actual number of infections that have been identified by a significant amount of time, anywhere from a week to 2 weeks. Last night, we saw over 1,800 Americans dead over the course of the last day, which is a big number. I mean, it's definitely a big number. Normally in America, about 7,500 Americans die in a given day. So add to that 1,800 Americans, although deaths from other causes is down fairly significantly because everybody is staying in, so nobody's dying in car crashes, for example. Overall, right now, the United States has suffered around 13,000 deaths, and virtually all of those have accrued in the last 2 weeks. We have well over 400,000 cases. The majority of the cases that have been identified, or at least the vast plurality of the cases that have been identified in New York. 142,000 cases identified in New York, over 5,000 deaths in New York, approaching 6,000 deaths in New York. So New York is indeed the epicenter of all this, followed by New Jersey. What's been kind of amazing is to look at the contrast between, say, New York and New Jersey and California, another highly populous state, which to date has still seen under 500 deaths in the state of California. And the lockdown orders that went into place in California went down 3-4 days earlier than the lockdown orders that went into place in New York, maybe a week earlier on the very outside in places like San Francisco. With all of that said, the big factor here is that not only did California lock down very quickly, California also is much more spacious. There, people are out in suburbia, people are not on top of each other the same way they are in areas with public transportation networks that are used in enormous fashion. It's why you are seeing big upticks in Detroit. Basically, population density is a fairly good indicator that you are going to get a fairly large wave because people are infecting each other. Meanwhile, over in the UK, Boris Johnson remains in intensive care for the second straight day. He apparently is not on ventilators. He apparently is on some sort of supplemental oxygen. Johnson is in stable condition. He is breathing without the help of a ventilator, according to a government spokesperson. The 55-year-old has not been diagnosed with pneumonia, but is indeed receiving oxygen. So that is the latest on Boris Johnson. Now, I said there was some good news. And in fact, there is some very, very good news. Like a lot of good news, actually, today. I mean, as good as the news can be in the middle of a global pandemic. But the news is good. So you remember that IMHE model that I've been talking about all week long? I've been talking about the modeling and how uncertain the modeling is and what that means for how we get out of this. And we're going to get to what all of the new data means for how we get out of this, how we reopen the economy and go back to some form of life in just a few minutes. But the IMHE model has been downgraded again. So over the course of the last 5 days, the IMHE model from University of Washington, which is a curve-fitting model, meaning what they do is they look at all the data coming in from different areas, and then they try and draw a curve to fit the curves that they're seeing in other areas. So as more data comes in, then they are changing their curve to fit the data that is coming in. Originally, they were relying on Wuhan data, and they were relying on Italy data, and it turns out that data was outlying data or not properly reported in the case of China. And so they were really overestimating what the peak would be, it looks like. They were also really underestimating how fast the peak would arrive, because it looked as though it was taking a while for things to build to a peak, because it did take a while in Italy, but that's because their hospital resource use was completely overwhelmed. So they have now downgraded the model again, the IMHE University of Washington model. So remember, they had suggested anywhere from 100,000 to 250,000 deaths by the beginning of August. Well, now they are suggesting that the total number of deaths in the United States, which they pegged at like 93,000 as of last Friday, and then they downgraded that to 82,000 on Monday. They've now dropped it dramatically again. That has now dropped to 60,415. So it has dropped by fully 1/3 since Friday. And that is because the new data is coming in. Now again, they were already gearing for everybody locked down. That was one of the actual provisions of their study. The study was done with the assumption that everyone was going to lock down through the end of May. Now,
Sorry about that. We'll have to wait through his ad. But if you want to hear the rest of that information,
At HostGator, you can get the website you need for where you're at or where you're going. Start with HostGator, stay with HostGator. That's on.
sorry.
As good news starts May. Now, is everybody going to lock down through the end of May? I don't know. I think that's pretty highly unlikely, considering that we are only at the beginning of April. Like, going for another 6 weeks on this thing seems rather uncertain. But with that said, the question is, why the variability in their own model, right? Why did the curve change so much? So either they underestimated the impact of people locking down, meaning that people locking down really spread the transmission rates, and it's a factor of the transmission rates, not the death rates, meaning that there are only a few factors here that could really be impacting the number of deaths total, right? There's the transmission rate, meaning let's say that you hold the death rate constant. Let's say the death rate is 1%, but the transmission rate is like 3 times. So you're going to infect 3 people. So that means tons of people get infected and tons of people die because you've infected a lot of people, even if the death rate is the same as, for example, the flu. So that is one possibility. Another possibility is that the death rates themselves were overestimated, meaning that the transmission rate was not as high as previously thought, but they thought that more people were dying of it than were actually dying of it. And then the third possibility is they thought that if people stayed home, then they would still be going out and meeting other people, but they didn't change that factor. So what that really suggests is that either this thing is not quite as transmissible as they had originally supposed, or the death rate based on actual case numbers is not as high as previously supposed. And these questions are really vital. It is really important to know the answer.
So, if you go back to previous shows, I predicted this. I predicted this through the model of comparing the data to what was going on in the cruise ships. And they still continue to this day to ignore the cruise ships. When he's talking about the transmission rate, you have people who are together on a ship for 7 to 14 days. And not every single person on that ship got the virus. And even if they came in contact with it, we're not able to determine at this point whether or not they were already immune to it, they were exposed to it, and nothing happened, or they got the virus and they were a carrier. All of those factors needed to be in this model they were using, and they needed to use data that was relevant to the idea that you take a population and you put this virus in the population, and you have all of these factors we already know that occur with viruses, and you put those all into the model to try to correlate, okay, so what's going to happen, how much more transmission are we going to see? But let's look, that cruise ship doesn't have that kind of dynamic happening, so we need to adjust the model. Something else is occurring there. They probably should have tested for antibodies and for the virus every single person on that ship. Then they would have known that information, but they didn't. They didn't contact every single person on these ships for the last 3 months and have them tested to see if they were exposed and had antibodies and just didn't get sick, see if they didn't have the virus, or maybe they do and they don't even know it. But instead, we're using incorrect data to over-sensationalize something and make everybody afraid. So, again, this is just, you should be afraid not of the COVID virus, but of how this is being handled.
Answers to these questions, because until we know the answers to these questions, we're not going to know how to roll out a recovery plan. We're not going to know, should we let tons of people out? Because what if a huge percentage of the population has already had this thing? What if 30% of the population has already had this thing? Right? As we are seeing in New York City, as the number of tests goes up, so does the number of positives. We've actually seen something like a 45, 46% positive rate for people who are coming in for coronavirus tests in New York. Now again, that's self-selected, right? It's not randomly selected. Those are people who are coming in with symptoms. But that does suggest pretty wide and broad spread of this thing. Okay, so they have also downgraded the number of deaths per day in terms of the peak. So like 3 days ago, they were suggesting that the peak was going to happen, I believe, April 15th, and they had suggested over 3,000 deaths, like 3,300 deaths on that day. Instead, they're now projecting that the highest day of death is going to be on April 12th and will be 2,200 deaths, which is a lot lower, like a lot lower. And then it will quickly drop off to the point where we are experiencing double-digit deaths if this model holds, which again, they've been dropping it consistently. So we hope that they continue to drop it. If this model were to be the one that actually holds, if this were accurate, then we would be dropping into double-digit deaths by May 21st, right? Which is very, very good news. Also, when it comes to the resources that are used, same sort of deal. They've dramatically downgraded the number of beds that will be needed, the number of ICU beds that will be needed, the number of ventilators that will be needed. Remember, they had been suggesting, I believe, 29,000 ventilators would be needed.
So for today's show, I want to wrap it up. I don't want to go too long today because I've been going like an hour and 20 minutes. And I'm really only supposed to be going for a half an hour. Is as much as we've been hearing in this regard, we should have been hearing parallel data as compared to what's happening with influenza and the flu. And again, they just refuse to do it. Because if you reported in the same way they're reporting right now, the flu data would be worse because 32,000 people died. We have 12,000 that died from COVID, but 32,000 people are dying from influenza this year, through the season. Through the year, it's going to be 62,000. So based on their new model, they're going to be identical potentially for the year. Because if this is going to continue to modify, it might come right down to the seasonal flu data. And then we should have shut the country down. We should have put the country at risk. We should be spending $2 billion when we could have kept the economy going. We could have done social distancing. We could have taken precautions. We could have tested for antibodies. We could have focused on getting testing out there versus just decimating the economy again. And so again, here's a prediction for you. They did this with the mortgage debacle. They took away people's capital. They took away people's wealth, and then make them dependent on the government. That one obviously worked, and nobody did anything about it, and the banks got filthy rich. We're doing it again. $2 billion. Businesses are going to get a bunch of money. People are not going to get money flowed through them sufficiently to help protect them in their finances. I mean, I had a conversation, if you were with us yesterday at the end, with the person who works for a senator here in Wisconsin. And as far as they're concerned, the focus is the businesses, the small businesses, and then the people who work for the restaurants. Now, you need to really understand how people get paid in a restaurant. If we're talking about waiters and waitresses, they make barely minimum wage because they make the rest of their wages on tips. And they have to report a certain percentage. In general, they report an income that's very low. So it might on the face value look like, well, $370 a week for them will help them and allow them to do what they need to do while they're waiting for a new job. But they're not the only person that got laid off. If you look at people who work as cooks or in higher levels, they might make more money. But even at $10 or $12 an hour, they're probably still under that $370 a week. Now, they all want to talk about that. They don't want to talk about the person who's working at a Line Tech or at a Wausau Window and Wall or a Merrill Steel or an Agra Industries or companies where employees are making $60,000, $80,000, $100,000 a year and have now been laid off. Let me tell you, they have lifestyles that don't allow them to just simply back up to $370 a week. There's no way to make adjustments if the finance institutions are not going to work with them to help weather the storm. And right now there is no motivation for them to do that. I have to call AT&T today. AT&T announced that they were going to not charge the fees for your service, and I have a bill that's the same bill I had last month. So they really haven't done it yet, or maybe they're not going to do it at all. And banks have yet to announce that they're going to allow forbearance and let the payments go to the backside so that people can gain comfort from the fact for the next 2 or 3 months, they're going to be able to get a forbearance on their loan and then push it to the end of the loan and just add 3 months to their loan. So there's my prediction. We'll watch and see what happens, and I hope everybody proves me wrong. But there are a lot of indicators here that people are going to get comfortable with socialist activity. They're going to get comfortable with turning people in, and the government's going to keep pushing fear because that's how they get people to do what they want them to do. So let's try to not be afraid. Let's try to stay informed, do what we need to do to stay healthy that we were doing every day before this started. And let's do something real, like getting the drugs out there, get them made in mass production that are helping stem the tide of people passing away from this and dying from this, and do what it takes to stay healthy. So on that note, stay healthy, stay safe, and I'll see you tomorrow.